They don't come back when you're waiting. They don't come back when you're chasing. They don't even come back when you're begging for answers. No, the avoidant returns at the strangest, most painful time. When you've finally rebuilt. When you've learned to stand on your own again. When the ground beneath your feet feels steady without them. It's then, and only then, that they reappear. And the truth is, this isn't an accident. The return that is never random. They don't just wander back by coincidence. They don't just wake up one morning and think, maybe I'll go see how you're doing. No, the avoidance return is timed, but not in the conscious way you might expect. It's not a deliberate calculation written on a whiteboard in their mind. It's not a step-by-step plan where they wait until you've healed. It's subtler, deeper, rooted in the wiring of their nervous system. See, when you're chasing them, when your heart is still orbiting around theirs, when your world still bends to the gravity of their silence, they feel the weight, they feel the pull, and even if you don't say a word, your energy tells them, you're still here, I'm still waiting, I haven't let go. And to the avoidant, this isn't safety, this isn't reassurance, this is pressure. To them, your presence, your love, your closeness, your longing doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like being cornered, like being asked for something they don't know how to give. So while you're waiting, while you're hoping, while you're holding the door wide open for them, they don't return. Because to them, that open door looks like a trap. But something shifts the moment you start to rebuild. The moment you stop waiting at that door. The moment your focus, your energy, and your love turn back toward yourself. Suddenly, the pressure dissolves. Suddenly, the demand is gone. Suddenly, the avoidant feels space again. And space is the one thing their nervous system equates with safety. Think of it like this. The avoidant lives in a constant push-pull cycle. They crave closeness, but fear being consumed by it. They want love, but don't know how to live inside its warmth, without feeling like they'll suffocate. So what do? They retreat. They distance. They freeze. And while they're gone, they're watching. Not always consciously, but they're sensing. They feel the invisible strings that once tied you to them. And when those strings loosen, when the tension fades, when the pull disappears, their body registers it. And for the first time, they don't feel chased. They feel safe enough to inch back toward you. This is why the return feels so strange, so poorly timed, so cruel, even. Because you don't see their return when you're broken. You don't see it when you're begging. You don't see it when you're still bleeding from the wound they left behind. No, you see it when you've finally stopped searching the horizon. When your nights don't ache in the same way. When your mornings feel lighter. When your reflection no longer looks like someone waiting for rescue. It's then, when you've finally found your footing, that they appear again. And here's the cruel paradox. The very act of you letting go is what makes them feel safe enough to reach out. The very strength you found without them is what draws them back to you. The very healing you fought for is what awakens something in them that was terrified by your closeness before. But don't mistake this for growth. Don't mistake this for transformation. Don't mistake their timing for love finally realized. Because more often than not, this isn't about them finally being ready. This is about them finally feeling safe. And that safety comes not from their change, but from your distance. And this is why it always hurts. Because when they come back to a version of you that has fought to rebuild. A version of you that has stitched yourself together. A version of you that no longer lives with your hands outstretched for them. Their return doesn't validate your pain. It reopens it. Because deep down, you can feel the truth. They didn't come back because they were ready. They came back because you stopped asking them to be. The paradox of their return It feels unfair, doesn't it? After all the nights you spent unraveling in silence. After all the tears you swallowed because they weren't there to hold them. After all the mornings you forced yourself to rise. When the weight of their absence pressed like stone on your chest. And now, when you've clawed your way back, when you've learned to breathe without their presence, when you've finally tasted freedom, that's when they appear. But here's what's happening underneath. The avoidant is not running away from love itself. They are running away from the experience of love, as their body has been taught to interpret it. Love, to them, feels like demand. Affection, to them, feels like pressure. Closeness, to them, feels like the walls are closing in. It isn't that they don't want it. It's that their nervous system has been trained to believe that needing someone is dangerous. So when you were giving them your everything, your heart, your attention, your energy, they weren't receiving it as love. They were receiving it as weight. It was too much, too close, too engulfing. And so they did what their body has always done. They pulled away. They created distance. They disappeared, not because you were unworthy, not because your love wasn't enough, but because, to them, love was fire, and they didn't know how to stand near it without getting burned. But something shifts when you rebuild, when your world no longer revolves around them. The fire cools, the pressure evaporates, and for the first time, your love doesn't feel like a demand. It feels safe, and that's when their nervous system stops screaming run. That's when they feel the strange pull to return. But here's the paradox. By the time they come back, you've already walked miles from the place they left you. You've built strength in your solitude. You've found safety inside your own arms. You've tasted the quiet peace of not needing them. And so when they show up, it's no longer the reunion you dreamed of. It's a disruption, because you remember the nights you begged the universe for their return. You remember how much you prayed for their presence. And now that they're here, it doesn't land the way you once imagined. You see, the avoidant doesn't realize the cost of their timing. To them, it makes sense. They feel safer. They feel the weight is gone. So they believe, now I can come closer. But what they don't see is that in the time it took them to feel safe, you've done the excruciating work of healing. You've untied your identity from their approval. You've filled your lungs with air that wasn't borrowed from them. You've learned to dance again without their hand in yours. And that kind of strength doesn't just make you whole, it makes you different. So when they return, they don't return to the same version of you. They don't return to the one who was waiting by the door. They don't return to the one who begged them to stay. They return to someone they barely recognize. Someone who is radiant in their own wholeness. Someone who has learned how to thrive without them. And this is where the cruel cycle deepens. Because your strength is both what draws them back and what makes it hard for you to let them in again. There's a moment, a pause, when you see them standing there again. And in that instant, 100 memories collide inside you. The ache of their absence, the longing that once consumed you, the emptiness they left behind, and also the power you've gained since they were gone. The quiet mornings that belonged only to you. The nights you held yourself together and discovered you could. And so their return doesn't feel like salvation. It feels like confusion, because part of you still remembers how deeply you wanted this moment. But another part of you knows you aren't the same anymore. This is the paradox of the avoidance return. They come back only when you've proven you no longer need them. They draw near only when you've built your life without their presence. They choose you again only when you've chosen yourself first. And while that might look like love on the surface, what it really is their nervous system chasing safety. Not your heart, not your soul, not your entire being. Just the safety you unknowingly created by letting go. And that's why their timing feels cruel. Because it isn't built on your healing journey. It's built on their comfort. It isn't about the bond you rebuilt together. It's about the pressure that finally left their body when you stopped trying. And that truth, once you see it, can't be unseen. The weight of your absence. There is something the avoidant never tells you. Something buried under their silence. Something hidden beneath their distance. They act as though leaving you is easy. As though they slipped out of your orbit without a second thought. As though your presence was just another room they walked out of, closing the door behind them. But here's the truth they won't admit. Your absence is heavy. At first, when they left, they told themselves it was relief, space, freedom. They convinced themselves they could finally breathe. That without your calls, your closeness, your reminders of love, they could stretch again inside their own skin. And for a while, it felt true. The silence was quiet. The air was thin, but it was theirs. They felt light, unchained, unburdened. But the body never lies. And slowly, without them even noticing, your absence began to echo. At night, when the world went still, they noticed the quiet wasn't peace. It was hollow. The freedom they thought they craved suddenly revealed itself as loneliness. The silence wasn't light, it was heavy. Your absence pressed against them, like a weight they didn't know how to lift. And the strangest part? They couldn't admit it, not even to themselves. Because to confess that your absence mattered would unravel the story they built to justify leaving. So they told themselves other lies. That they liked being alone, that they were better without you, that needing anyone was weakness. But every time their mind repeated those lines, their body contradicted them. They thought of you in the quiet moments, in the songs that once played in your car, in the coffee mug you used to drink from, in the way their chest felt tighter when they passed the places you used to go together. They tried to bury it, to silence it, to outrun it. But your absence lingered, not as emptiness, but as a presence in reverse. You were everywhere, because you were nowhere. And this is the part that twists them inside. They don't understand why. How can they miss the very thing they pushed away? How can they ache for the love they once rejected? How can your absence weigh more than your presence ever did? It confuses them. It unsettles them. It terrifies them. Because your absence exposes a truth they have spent their whole lives avoiding. They need connection. They need closeness. They need love. And needing, to them, has always felt like danger. So your absence does something extraordinary. It flips the story. It turns the walls they built into a mirror. It forces them to face the contradiction inside themselves. That they run from what they crave. That they push away what they long for. That they destroy the very thing they are desperate to keep. And this realization, as faint and quiet as it begins, becomes the spark that eventually pulls them back toward you. But here's the bitter edge to this truth. They don't return because they've healed. They don't return because they've learned. They don't return because they're ready to love you in the way you always needed. They return because your absence grew too loud. Because the silence became unbearable. Because the weight of missing you finally tipped the scale. It isn't about choosing you out of abundance. It's about running back to you out of lack. And that difference, once you feel it in your bones, changes everything. Because when you see them standing at your door, you can almost sense it in the way they look at you. It's not just love in their eyes. It's hunger. It's need. It's the ache of someone who has been haunted by the very person they once pushed away. And for a fleeting moment, that look might make your heart skip. It might awaken the part of you that still longs for them. It might whisper, "See, they care. They always did." But then the deeper truth rises, and you realize they aren't drawn to you because they're ready. They're drawn to you because the emptiness finally caught up with them. And that is why your absence carries more weight than your presence ever did. Because when you were there, they couldn't see you. They couldn't feel the gift of your love without mistaking it for a demand. But when you were gone, they were forced to notice. They were forced to remember. They were forced to face themselves. And that's the cruel irony. You had to disappear for them to finally see you. But here's what you must hold on to. Just because they feel the weight of your absence doesn't mean they can carry the weight of your presence. And unless they confront the patterns inside them, their return will only recreate the cycle. Longing, closeness, pressure, distance, disappearance, over and over again. So when they come back, you must ask yourself, is this a return built on love? Or is it just the echo of absence pulling them back into orbit? Because only one of those will hold, and the other will break you again. The return that isn't what it seems. They show up again, sometimes quietly, slipping back into your world with a simple message. Sometimes suddenly, as if nothing ever happened. As if the silence, the distance, the disappearance wasn't months of absence, but just a pause in the middle of a conversation. And in that moment, your heart stumbles. Because no matter how strong you've become, no matter how much rebuilding you've done, their presence still pulls at you. It still stirs something. It still awakens the hope you buried under your healing. And this is exactly where the story begins to blur. On the surface, it looks like change. It looks like love finding its way back. It looks like fate, destiny, unfinished business. They text you things that sound like confessions. I've been thinking about you. I miss the way you understood me. No one else feels like you. And for a moment, it feels like everything you always wanted to hear. The validation that your love mattered. The proof that you were unforgettable. The sign that maybe this time will be different. But here's the truth hidden beneath their return. They don't come back because they've suddenly become capable of the intimacy they once ran from. They don't come back because they've resolved the fears that drove them away. They come back because the void inside them grew unbearable. Your absence exposed their hunger. And now, their return is less about choosing you and more about soothing themselves. This is why, when they reappear, you'll notice a strange rhythm in their behavior. They'll pull you close with words, but keep you far with actions. They'll pour out longing, but avoid commitment. They'll admit they missed you, but won't explain why they left. It feels like warmth on the surface, but when you hold it in your hands, it slips through your fingers like smoke. And you find yourself asking, are they here for me? Or are they here because of what my presence does for them? The answer is often painful. Avoidants return not because they're ready to love, but because being without you forced them to face a loneliness they couldn't outrun. You became the one thing they couldn't bury. And so, in their hunger, they circle back. But here's the part that breaks you if you're not careful. They can want you deeply, but still fear you once you're close. They can ache for you, but still pull away once you give. They can miss you desperately, but still reject the very intimacy they say they crave. And this is why their return often feels like a mirage. It looks like water in the desert, like the thing you've been waiting for, longing for, hoping for. But when you reach for it, your hands close around air. You see, for the avoidant, returning to you isn't the same as choosing you. To choose you would mean stepping into vulnerability. It would mean staying even when closeness feels overwhelming. It would mean unlearning the walls they've lived behind their whole lives. But returning? Returning is easier. It's reaching for comfort. It's feeding hunger. It's quieting the ache without ever confronting its root. That's why so many of their comebacks start with intensity but fade into distance again. They're not lies. They really do miss you. They really do want you. They really do ache for the connection you gave them. But the moment they feel that same intimacy pressing against their skin, the same closeness they once confused for suffocation, their body reacts the same way it always did. They retreat, and the cycle begins again. This is why their return is dangerous, because it awakens your hope. It reopens the door you tried so hard to close. It stirs the part of you that still believes your love can heal them. And in that hope, you risk forgetting the truth. Their return doesn't mean they've transformed. It means they've been haunted. Haunted by you, by what you gave, by what they lost. But being haunted is not the same as being ready. So when they return, you must hold steady in your clarity. Ask yourself, are they here to build with me? Or are they here to quiet their own hunger? Are they stepping forward with changed patterns? Or are they repeating the same dance with new words? Because here is the deepest lesson about their return. They don't come back for you. They come back to themselves, to soothe their ache, to fill their void, to silence their loneliness. And if you forget this, if you mistake their hunger for healing, you risk losing the very rebuilding you worked so hard to create. The avoidance return can feel like a second chance, but often it's just a circle that pulls you back into the orbit of their contradictions, a circle that replays the same story: closeness, pressure, distance, disappearance. And unless something breaks that cycle, the circle will keep spinning. The question becomes, will you step back into it, or will you stand in the strength you've built and see their return not as a sign of fate, but as a mirror of their unhealed hunger? Because only then can you decide if this return is a doorway forward or a spiral back into the same pain you've already survived. When their return becomes your choice, the avoidance return always feels like a storm breaking. It shakes the ground you've steadied. It floods the walls you've rebuilt. It calls out to the part of you that still remembers how it felt to be wanted by them. And in those first moments, it's tempting to believe it's destiny. That maybe time apart has healed them. That maybe your love finally reached the part of them they tried to hide. But the truth is more complicated. Their return is not the ending of the story. It's the beginning of a choice. Not theirs, but yours. Because for so long, the power felt like it was in their hands. They left. They withdrew. They chose distance. And you, left behind, felt powerless. You begged. You chased. You tried to prove your worth. You tried to fix what wasn't yours to fix. But here's the shift no one tells you. Their return is not about whether they finally choose you. It's about whether you choose yourself. When they reappear, you have to see clearly. To see past the words that ignite your heart. To see past the nostalgia that floods your mind. To see past the longing that still lives in your body. And instead, ask yourself, does their presence align with the life I've been building without them? Does their energy honor the healing I fought for? Do their actions show growth? Or do they still echo the patterns that once broke me? Because if you don't pause to ask these questions, you risk mistaking their hunger for your destiny. You risk confusing their ache for proof of change. You risk walking back into the same fire that once burned you to ash. And here's what makes this moment sacred. You're no longer the person you were when they left. You're stronger now, wiser now, clearer now. You've lived without them. You've rebuilt without them. You've proven to yourself that your worth is not tied to their presence. So when they come back, you're standing on ground they can no longer shake so easily. And that is where your power lies. You don't have to slam the door on them. You don't have to throw yourself back into their arms. You can simply stand still. You can watch how they move. You can let their actions speak louder than their longing. You can decide, not from desperation, but from clarity, whether their return is a step forward or a circle back to what you've already survived. And maybe, in some rare cases, they have done the work. Maybe they've faced the fears they ran from. Maybe they've unraveled the walls that once felt safer than love. Maybe they've reached a place where their return is not about hunger, but about readiness. But you won't know from their words. You won't know from their apologies. You won't know from their confessions of missing you. You'll know from their consistency. You'll know from their actions when the intimacy deepens. You'll know from their ability to stay when it gets uncomfortable. Because love is not in the comeback. It's in the staying. It's in the showing up day after day, without retreating into the old shadows. So when the avoidant returns, see it not as the resolution of your story, but as the beginning of a test of whether they've changed, a test of whether you've healed, a test of whether the two of you can meet now, not in the old patterns of fear and chasing, but in the steady ground of mutual choice. And if they fail that test, you'll know. You'll feel the same withdrawal, the same distance, the same quiet suffocation that once broke you. And this time, you won't lose yourself in it. Because now you know what it feels like to rebuild. Now you know your worth doesn't live in their hands. Now you know you can survive without them. And if they pass the test, if their actions match their words, if their presence matches their promises, if their staying matches their return, then maybe, just maybe, this is the love you both couldn't hold before. A love not of desperation, but of choice, not of chasing, but of meeting, not of fear, but of courage. But no matter the outcome, the choice will always be yours. So the next time the avoidant returns, remember, it isn't about what they want. It's about what you've grown into. It isn't about whether they finally see your worth. It's about whether you remember it yourself. They may return. They may long. They may ache. But you have the final word. Because sometimes the truest form of love is not welcoming them back into your arms, but honoring the life you've built without their absence. And if you're here listening, if these words have touched something in you, it's because deep down, you know this isn't just about them. It's about you. It's about your healing, your strength, your clarity. So if this resonated, don't let it end here. Stay with this journey. Let's keep walking into truth together. Because your healing deserves to be seen. Your story deserves to be honored. And your love deserves to be met fully and without fear.